Hold on 1 second. Let me get a little slurp. My water's hot. No publisher water? Oh. All right, ready to roll?
Welcome to the first episode of the 2016 season of X's and Omar. This is year 6 for the show.
6.
One more year than Ryan Tannehill has had with Miami, and we are getting ready for the dress rehearsal in Orlando, the third preseason game as the Dolphins take on the Falcons. And we are just 2 weeks away from the real season starting as the Dolphins head out to Seattle to take on Russell Wilson and the Legion of Boom? Legion of Boom.
Legion of, I thought it was Legion of
Doom? Well, you wrote down Legion of Dome. I know that's not right. I'm pretty sure it's Legion of Boom, which is closer. Of course, Omar Kelly, Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist,
Here
X's
for
and
my
Omar.
10th season of covering the Dolphins. Can you believe it? It's been a decade of mediocrity for me.
I've had a few less years of mediocrity. My name is Matt Lincoln. I'm the sports director at CBS 12 in Palm Beach and the Treasure Coast. So we're going to take all your questions, a lot of them that Omar has had online and on Twitter using the hashtag XOmar. We're going to break down the start of the season and what we've seen through 2 preseason games.
Don't forget training camp.
And training camp.
Training camp, to me, what we see at practice, you've been out there.
Sure.
It usually translates to the game.
Yeah.
A guy who does well at practice usually translates and plays well at the game. There are rare exceptions when guys step up and play much better at practice. So we've seen 3 weeks of practice. We've seen 2 exhibition games. Thursday's another one. This is going to be a long season.
Okay, let's talk about those preseason games. What have you seen that has stood out in the win over the Giants and what Adam Gase called a drumming at the hands of the Cowboys?
The first game against the Giants, what really surprised me is I thought that there was more depth than I initially expected from the Dolphins. They came from behind and pulled off that impressive victory, got 4 turnovers from the defense. We're talking about pressure from the backups like Chris McCain, sacks caused by Walt Aikens. They put the offense in situations to score points and score easy, to cut off half the field so they didn't have to drive the length of the field. That gives you a chance to win in the NFL. Usually the teams that are on the positive side of the turnover margin, they win games. What I didn't like was I didn't see an offensive line that could protect Ryan Tannehill, an offensive line that made him comfortable. Now, that got addressed in Game 2, or at least we think it got addressed in Game 3. Let me point out, even though Laramie Tunsil and Jermon Bushrod were inserted into the starting lineup, and Ryan Tannehill seemingly had a tremendous amount of time to work in the pocket, let's also be realistic and make sure everybody knows that Dallas probably has the worst defensive line in the NFL.
Missing guys to suspensions and everything.
Missing guys to suspension, just tons of hodgepodge, just garbage on their defensive line. So that can explain why there was no pass rushing. But the one thing that I walked away from the Dallas game with a little bit of a concern is, where's the running game? Didn't you say that you were going to work on the run game in the exhibition season? And it's not here yet.
No, and it certainly did not look good with Arian Foster. 2 slow rushes hitting the backfield.
You know what? I'm not too nervous about Arian Foster right now, primarily because I've heard that he's a player who paces himself. Mm-hmm. Also, I've heard that he's a player who it takes time for him to get up to, work his way up into regular season form. Am I ready to say he's going to be a starter? Am I ready to tell you to put him on your fantasy football team? Sure. No.
Okay.
But I've seen him practice a lot harder this week than I have seen him practice before. And it could be just a veteran. The season's 2 weeks away. Time for me to get my act together.
What else impressive players from the first 2 games?
To me, Chris McCain. You know how I feel about Chris McCain.
Sure, you love Chris McCain.
I love Chris McCain and what he brings to the table as a pass rusher. Now, can Chris McCain set the edge? Can he give you what you need on special teams? I'm not certain about that. But pass rushers, guys who can get to the quarterback 1 out of every 4 snaps, those guys are pretty hard to find. And Chris McCain has something special to him as a pass rusher. We saw that in Game 1. We did not see that in Game 2 because he got 8 snaps. He got injured. It'll be interesting to see what happens to Chris McCain because he's definitely one of those guys on the bubble in terms of whether or not he makes a 53-man roster. I liked what I saw from Bobby McCain in Game 1, not necessarily what I liked in Game 2. Hopefully he adds up and becomes a little bit more consistent. That's really the issue with young players. Can they bring consistency? Definitely liked what I saw from Jakeem Grant in Game 1 as a returner and as a receiver. As you followed me and you know, I'm not a huge Jakeem Grant fan because the kid catches horribly. He catches about 50% of his passes in practice. But as long as it translates to the game and you're a reliable player and you're not dropping punts and you're not dropping receptions, 2 thumbs up.
Talking about catching balls, 2 touchdowns for Kenny Stills.
Yeah, you know what? I was having this discussion with my partner, Chris Perkins, during locker room yesterday. And I was like, I think we should write something about Kenny Stills. 2 touchdowns is kind of, big, especially for him, considering the spot he's in. But here's the thing that really woke me up, that what Chris Perkins said. He's a veteran. This is his 4th year in the NFL. His 3rd year as a starter. He should be scoring touchdowns. This offense should be scoring touchdowns. And why, if it was a rookie, then maybe we should write about it.
I just think if you look at the weapons that the Dolphins have, Stills is at the bottom of the guys that you get excited about, I think, because of what Devontae Parker, what people are hoping potentially brings. Jarvis Landry owns the Dolphins single-season catch record.
No. He owns the NFL catch record for most receptions in his first 2 years.
Well, he owns that as well.
Yes.
So is Stills a guy who, if he also raises that level, are we talking about 3 great weapons from the receiving corps?
Well, that's great is a little bit of a stretch. We're not at great.
Okay.
Look, Jarvis is borderline great. Everybody else is pretty decent.
Okay.
But yeah, they've got 3 good receivers. I think there are only 2 units on this team that have depth to them. That's defensive end and wide receiver. Everything else is just a hodgepodge of mess.
Through 2 preseason games, what is sounding the alarm right now for you?
To me, it starts with the trenches. Can you run the ball? Can you stop the run? I'm an old school football kind of guy. I believe in trench play. I watch trench play. I love trench play. And to me, the Dolphins, where it started and ended last year with the Dolphins, is they couldn't run the ball consistently and they couldn't stop the run. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And it's very disappointing to see that, considering you spent a lot of money this offseason. You made a lot of additions. You Mario Williams, wide 9 defense, Vance Joseph, Kiko Alonso, bigger cornerbacks, Issa Abdul-Qaddus. You did a lot on defense. Mm-hmm. Still can't stop the run.
Still can't stop the run. Well,
but
that's
2
also
exhibition games.
Yeah, but still, Cowboys might have the best running game in all of football. Let's take our first Twitter question.
Let's not pretend like they had starters there.
Okay, you're right. Let's take a question from Nate. How has this team improved when compared to last year, and why? Do we know that yet?
I think the team is better coached from the top, Adam Gase, and I heard something today that really made me think. They can't blame you for being, if you're yourself, they can't say, hey, you're not authentic, or at least you're a bad version of yourself. And I think that's what you're getting from Adam Gase right now. He is a really likable coach from a player standpoint, from a media standpoint. And now Dan Campbell was likable too. The question is, can Adam Gase coach better than Dan Campbell could coach?
Well, we don't know that yet.
We don't know that.
But it seems like I would bet yes.
If he can fix the quarterback and get this offense to score 24 points, half the battle is won.
Oh, good. Let's talk about the quarterback real quick.
Oh,
we got
really?
Twitter question from Randy, who asks, with decent protection in the Dallas game, Ryan Tannehill's accuracy seemed much improved. Does this mean he can take the next step?
We've been waiting for the next step for 4 years. I am not confident in what I've seen from Ryan Tannehill. I probably will never be confident in what I see from Ryan Tannehill until he leads the Dolphins to a playoff victory. What you see from Ryan Tannehill on a consistent basis is he's up here, and then he's down here. Yeah. One game he's up here, one game he's down here. One game he's up here, one game he's down here. When it adds up, you're the 18th best quarterback in the NFL, which is where I ranked him in a Sun Sentinel poll. He has to get to the point where you produce consistent play. And most importantly, you produce consistent play on 3rd downs, in the 4th quarter, and in the red zone. The money areas, the money time, clutch performances. He is not a clutch performer. And if you can get him to play at a level where he is being clutch and more consistent, I think you got a chance.
Yeah, any Tannehill fan who really backs him, you got to, think about how many games, because it didn't happen at all last year, that he led the Dolphins to a win late in the game. Just hasn't happened.
It's happened earlier in his career, but it certainly, last year the defense didn't even put them in position to win games, and the offense certainly didn't help as well.
Sure.
You can't score 19 points and think you're going to win in the NFL.
All right, let's move on and talk a little bit more about the coaching staff, because that's really what we've seen here over the past few months. After Dave Wannstedt, we have seen a carousel of bad coaches run through South Florida, and now we have Adam Gase, who, yes, he's the youngest head coach in the NFL. He's never coached an NFL game. He's going to try to call plays and be the head coach at the same time. A lot on his plate. What have we learned about the Nick Saban protege so far?
I think he has got the right personality. Players are responding to him. I think he's an upfront and confident guy, a tinge of arrogance to him. I think he's direct. I think all of those things make, he's relatable. He understands what his players need. He doesn't really push them tremendously hard during practice. I think he reminds me a little bit of a combination of Tony Sparano, Dan Campbell, and it's kind of gives you that old school feel to it. Now the question is, can you coach? Can you outsmart Bill Belichick? Can you make the necessary adjustments that you need in order to outthink Bill Belichick and throw something at him that he's got to spend the next quarter figuring out? That's the question. Can you respond to adversity? Can you respond to losses? And when your team's down and depressed and they're in a funk and you need to pick them up, that's your job, Adam Gase. You got to pick them up off the floor. And right now, everything is great. Everything's all gravy. But he hasn't lost a game. Not a game that matters. Ask me about Adam Gase when he's lost 3 straight games, because it will happen.
And he's been all those things that you said about him is what we have seen in the press setting when he's in open practices and at press conferences. What have players told you? Do they say that he is the same way in meetings and in behind closed doors?
Likeable guy, has a way to relate to every player, and that's different. You can't just like Joe Philbin used to do. One cookie cutter approach. Everybody's got to fit in the cookie cutter approach. If you don't fit in, you got to go.
Right.
Adam Gase finds a way to relate to every player. Some players need a kick in the backside. Some players need a pat on the back. Some players need you to coddle them and stroke them.
Some players need all of that.
Some players need all of that. And some players need you to give them a give and take. He figures that out. He knows. He caters to everybody. And players say that it's very easy to coach. It's very easy to learn from his coaching. The question is, will all this learning produce execution? And, to me, I've got a magic number. Offense needs to score 24 points. You score 24 points, I think you're going to have a chance to produce a winning season, be in the playoffs. The problem that you have is this offense, Bill Lazor, they scored 24 points under Bill Lazor. I think you can win with 24 points if your defense isn't garbage, which, jury's still out on that.
Jury's still out on that. All right, let's take our next turn question. Comes from John. How much of an impact does moving on from Joe Philbin and staff impact this team?
It does. It impacts it tremendously because of the leadership void that was there during Joe Philbin. I mean, Joe Philbin spent so much time banishing players with strong personalities, leaders, caging dogs like Chris McCain, and, guys that you didn't feel comfortable with. Well, they had to stay in the cage. Adam Gase encourages personality, encourages alpha male mentality. They had an alpha male draft. Now, none of those guys are really panning out right now, except for Laramie Tunsil. But, a lot of things factored into it. Confident group. He wants a confident team. The question is, will that confidence translate into results?
That's a huge question. Chris asks, what, if anything, do you see that the Dolphins have that they can start to build upon as the Adam Gase era begins?
You've got a quarterback with all the tools. In terms of things that he can do.
We're not counting cojones as tools.
Moxie, leadership, no, they're not tools. I'm talking arm strength. I'm talking athleticism. I'm talking work ethic. I'm talking intelligence.
He has all those.
He doesn't have accuracy.
Sure.
And he doesn't have a big set. Now, Dan Campbell coached him to be aggressive. Will this next coach, and he produced big plays. Didn't produce great numbers, but he produced big plays. Will this next coach him to be aggressive?
Well-
We're not seeing that in practice.
Right. And we're seeing dinks and a lot of dunks. And
It's-
and there was
it's
that one
dink and
day
dunk city.
about a week ago in which Adam Gase came out and said this is a 10-yard league. And that's what we're going to do.
That works on you can dink and dunk it. The problem that you have when you run a dink and dunk offense like Tannehill has done throughout his career and the Dolphins have had throughout this decade is you're relying on 10 to 12 play drives. Every play that you have leads to a possibility that a mistake is made by an offensive lineman, by a running back, by penalty, by a receiver, by a quarterback. More plays you have, the more opportunity you have to make a mistake. And defenses capitalize on those mistakes.
Sure. A holding penalty ends the drive.
I remember 2009 season. The Dolphins were playing. This was the game that, just 2010. Chad Henne was the starting quarterback. Dolphins were playing in Baltimore. That was a great defense. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, and that was Joe Flacco versus Chad Henne 3 years in as starting quarterbacks. And I said to myself, this is the game I see if Chad Henne has it, can do it. And I remember they got beat down, and I went into that locker room, and Ed Reed basically summed up Chad Henne, how to play Chad Henne. All you got to do is stay back and wait for him to make a mistake because he's not going to beat you. Wait for him to make a mistake. And we did, and he did.
Yeah, right.
Same thing with Ryan Tannehill. Just wait for him to make a mistake. It's going to come. Defense has to capitalize on it, but if you're patient enough, it's going to be there. Not just him, the offensive line, the running back. Just wait for them to make a mistake. That's how you play the Dolphins. Just wait for them to beat themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the dink and dunk might work for the Patriots, but Ryan Tannehill, you are no Tom Brady, sir.
Yes, no. You aren't one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL.
All right, let's go. I'm going to go back a little bit, take a Twitter question from Patrick.
Okay.
Who wants to talk a little bit about defense. Defenders say they need to fix the little things when tackling is an issue. What's really happening, and why does this problem persist?
Good question. It happens because players do not work on tackling during practice. It's just not something that the Dolphins choose to do because of fear of risk of injury. Now, I went to Tampa Bay and watched a practice that featured 2 tackling periods. Now, Tampa Bay wants to be a physical team. They want to run the ball. They've got a very good running game. Hey, maybe that's their mentality, their coach's mentality. We will see who has a better outcome there from an injury standpoint and from a tackling standpoint. My problem with this defense is that you knew linebacker was a problem from jump. You knew defensive tackle was a problem from jump, outside of Ndamukong Suh, of course. What did you do to address both? You added Kiko Alonso. Did you add anybody else to that linebacker unit?
No one.
You're just going with the same old situation. Okay, no problem. Defensive tackle. Ndamukong Suh got a lot of money. He's giving you production. What about the guy next to him? Jordan Phillips, Earl Mitchell, now Chris Jones. You added Chris Jones, great waiver wire, fine. But did you make enough improvements to make sure that you have a pillar of granite there while Ndamukong Suh's rushing upfield? You didn't do it. And now you're putting a lot of pressure on your weakest unit on that defense, which is the linebacker. Well, cornerback is pretty weak too. But your linebackers are not very good short tacklers. They're not very durable, and all the pressure's on them in this wide 9 defense.
Is this all left over from the Suh contract, the fact the Dolphins are the only team that has 8 players making $8 million or more of the cap? There's just no money for these.
No, that's no.
Okay.
No. Bad excuse. Because last I count, and I haven't checked recently, but Dolphins had $16 million in cap space. There's no excuse about why you can't do what you want to do. You got $16 million to spend. Yeah, you want to carry it over to next year when you want to go spend again and sell fans that, oh, it's going to be better and sell hope. Great. No problem. Fine. But don't use the fact that you're paying Tannehill a ridiculous amount of money and Suh a ridiculous amount of money, because those are the only two that make a ridiculous amount of money. You got $60 million in leftover cap space. You got a young, cheap roster. Figure it out. You could have signed guys like Brandon Spikes or Antonio Cromartie or Leon Hall or Antro role. You could have done that. You chose to go with the younger players and see where they are. Sink or swim season. Great, no problem. But when you produce a 6-10 record, don't come crying to me and like, well, we didn't have enough talent. Well, you chose not to have enough talent.
So what's the worst hole? Defensive tackle next to Sue, the mediocre linebackers and no depth at all, or the corner opposite of Maxwell?
I think it's, oh boy, you're asking a tough one. I think the most problematic area that you're going to have is probably going to be the linebackers, because all three of the starters have injury history. Yeah. So what happens when two goes down? You've only got one quality backup in Neville Hewitt. One.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if I could name any other. They've got like 8 guys there, and other than Neville Hewitt, I don't know if any of the other guys.
Not Mike Cole. Mike Cole, he's okay. He might give you a good 4 decent game run before he gets hurt, but
he's not a big guy either,
he's
though.
About this
yeah,
big.
He's a little guy.
Not that he couldn't whoop me, but hey.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, we're not looking to fight anybody. We're just looking for someone to tackle somebody.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. In the Sun Sentinel this week, you brought up 10 issues that the Dolphins have to fix before the season starts in just 2 weeks. Is this reasonable to think that any of these are going to get fixed, or some of these could get fixed?
I think they can. I mean, if you're really thinking about it from this standpoint, you've got offensive line. Get them comfortable. Get them to the point where they are able to develop chemistry. Don't change that starting lineup, obviously, without the exception of Mike Pouncey, who's sidelined, and Anthony Steen is filling in as a starting center right now. Get them to a point where they can start to develop chemistry. Maybe by week 4 of the regular season, they've got it going. They're into a groove if injuries don't take place. Finding a cornerback opposite Byron Maxwell is important. I think it's Xavier Howard getting cleared to practice, getting back. He'll probably be able to participate in the exhibition season finale. I think that's important. The question is, where are you going with a nickel cornerback? Is it Bobby McCain? Is it Tony? Is it going to be Michael Thomas? You know, get one of those guys in there, get them comfortable, and see where that goes. Other issues, I mean, man, this tight end situation is just. I wrote about that in today's Sun Sentinel, Wednesday Sun Sentinel. I've never been around a team that dances around the subject. It's such a sore subject, they just don't even really want to address it. It's
in what way? Like, give me an example.
They want to avoid it. They don't want to say, "Oh, we're struggling right now. We're doing a little bit bad."
But they've poured $8 million this year to Jordan Cameron. Why is he not the guy they need?
I don't think he's grasped the offense. This is just my theory. I don't think he's grasped the offense well enough to play without thinking. And there are certain players who, when they're thinking, they're not very good. And I'm not calling Jordan Cameron a dumb guy, because I don't think that's
I don't think he is either, yeah.
But when you're pressing, guys who start pressing, sometimes it's like a hitter in a batter slump. You start pressing, sometimes that average goes down. You gotta get out of your head. And I think that these tight ends are in their head. They're dropping way too many passes. The biggest issue right now is, can they catch contested passes? And can Ryan Tannehill develop a trust level to actually throw to him? And I'm not necessarily seeing that. Right now, it'll be interesting to see what happens when Adam Gase begins to game plan for the tight end and to use them to figure out. They're a chess piece that allows Tannehill to identify what everybody else is doing on defense. So, but he's got to be some kind of weapon.
But with the weapons that the Finns have at the receiving core, the tight end problem is probably not the biggest problem that the Dolphins are going to look at this year. Is this one of those things that they just look at next year to try to figure out?
I mean, Jordan Cameron's already got his money. Deion Sims is in a contract year. I could see them leaning more towards Deion Sims just to get something reliable. I mean, you're not talking about you need a sensational Charles Clay. You're talking about, hell, give me Anthony Fasano. Hell, maybe Anthony Fasano gets cut and Dolphins can go claim him. I really don't like the number 3 tight end. There's nobody there worth keeping. I think that they probably need to go out on the waiver wire or via trade and try to figure out something that can help their unit. What I do like about Chicago is Zach Miller, who's a guy who'd been out of the league since 2000, and I couldn't even tell you. He'd been out of the league for like 5 years. Adam Gase and the Bears coaching staff dusted him off. The guy had a career year. So it shows you that Just give him something that he
Right.
can work with, and it'll be respectable.
Let's take our next Twitter question. It comes from Christopher. Was it just me, or did Arian Foster look slow and hesitant against the Cowboys? You said he's working his way in a little bit.
I looked at all his games from last season. Weren't that many? I think 3 or 4, and which he had a 2.6 yards per carry average. He does look slow. He's slowing down. The question is, can he regain that speed? Can he regain that first step? He's a patient zone runner. He waits for the holes, and then he hits it and goes. The problem right now, he can still see the holes. The problem is the hitting it and going.
Right.
That he's like a car with a trunk full of stuff in the back. The takeoff is not happening.
Yeah.
And I've seen him practice better this week. I'm interested to see how much of it has been injury versus how much of it is him pacing himself versus how much of it is he just doesn't have it anymore.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, we're still trying to figure out Adam Gase, but I don't get the feeling like he's a guy who talks up guys just for the sake of talking up guys. And what do you disagree?
Sometimes.
Well, anyway, I
heard him talk up
he
Jordan
said a
Phillips
lot.
this week.
Oh well,
come on.
Fair
Like,
enough.
yeah.
He said a lot positive about Foster. Right since he got
Because
here.
he's got a big ego, big personality. You got to stroke big personalities. Okay.
Okay.
What has Foster done so far?
It doesn't seem like he's done anything.
Okay. I'm sure if we asked him about Jay Ajayi tomorrow, he'd talk him up. What has Jay Ajayi done so far?
He hasn't done anything.
All right.
Fair enough.
Jordan Phillips. He talked about him yesterday. What has Jordan Phillips done so far?
I get your point. All right, let's move on to Chris on Twitter. Do you have any advice for Dolphins fans who are struggling to find a reason to be excited about the 2016 season? I hate this question.
I love it.
How can you not be excited about football?
The problem is when you're a Dolphin fan, you've had one winning season since 2004. I don't know.
You got to learn to enjoy the little things. Then.
Yeah, you do have to learn, and that's
New
what
stadium.
the season's about.
New stadium.
Oh man, that stadium's going to be pretty. New stadium. You're not cooking out there in the sun. But that's non-football related. I think that what I'm excited about is I'm going to get to understand the wide 9 defense. I don't predict it's going to be successful, but I'm going to get to learn it. And I think it's important for me to learn every different segment of football. And there's something about studying it and then something about seeing it firsthand. I'm personally excited about that. Also, I'm excited about figuring out whether or not Ryan Tannehill can be a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. I don't say he has to be there this year, but you got to move from quarterback number 18 to at least quarterback number 14 this year. You got to get into the 90 quarterback rating. You got to be efficient. You got to be a guy that your teammates look at as a leader, a guy that they're confident in. And that's not Tannehill. That's not Tannehill. It hasn't been Tannehill. Can he get to that point? This is a pooper get off the pot year for Ryan. So, and you've got the quarterback coach now. You've got the quarterback whisperer. Hopefully the quarterback whisperer can help him take his game to the next level so that we can conclude whether or not we're going to be wasting or spending $18 million wisely next season. That money is not guaranteed to Ryan. Dolphins, if they want to move on, they can. It'll be interesting to see what they do.
That's the thing, watching to see if he develops. I'm personally excited to watch these receivers develop because whether or not if Tannehill continues to play like he does play, he's still going to give the opportunity to Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker to make plays.
Yes.
And they're not great maybe yet.
Why do you say Devontae Parker? I think it's Jarvis Landry and Kenny Stills.
Okay. The three of them.
Yeah, the three amigos, yes.
If they can show those kinds of exciting plays, I think it's going to be fun to watch them all year long.
Hopefully we have a fun offense. We've been waiting for one of those for a while.
Yeah, even last year when it was not fun at all, Landry gave you some things to be just excited. I just love watching the kid play. Okay. If you're gonna go out there and if there's someone to root for on the Dolphins, one guy,
Jarvis Landry.
Jarvis Landry's the guy.
This is a season. I root for a lot of guys, but this is a season where you're going to get to see a lot of young guys are going to be thrown into the deep end of the pool. We're going to see if they can sink or swim. And
Development.
It's a development season, and I'm excited about that. You got to know where you are as an organization. In 2012, when Joe Philbin got here, they didn't add any free agents. They just said, we're going to take what we got to the games and see what they can do. And Same thing with Adam Gase this year, even though they spend a lot of money on free agents. They want to see what this team can do. And I'm very curious to see how Bobby McCain can play and how Kiko Alonso can play and some of these young guys like, Laramie Tunsil and Jay Ajayi. Curious.
All right, let's take one more tour question real quick before we leave. Luke says, what are the best and worst decisions the Dolphins front office made this offseason?
I think one of the best decisions that they made this offseason was extending Cameron Wake's contract. I think it sent a great message to the rest of the players in the locker room, and it also sort of eases the tension of whether or not Cameron Wake is going to end his career with the Dolphins. I'm not necessarily sure Cameron is a every down pass rusher anymore. I'm not sure he could set the edge anymore, especially in this wide 9 defense. It's going to be interesting to see how he's used, but I like the fact that one of your greats of this decade is probably going to end his career with the Miami Dolphins. I think that that's one of the best moves that they've done. To me, the worst move has to be purging the secondary, even though it was a bad secondary. Not going to deny it. They put up a franchise record in terms of quarterback rating for opposing quarterback. But Brent Grimes, Bryce McCain, Jamar Taylor are all contributing for other NFL teams. Mm-hmm. They're all doing quite well at training camps where they are. Dolphins, can you say the same thing about Dolphins cornerbacks? No. A lot of that was coaching. A lot of that was scheme. A lot of that was a safety play. A lot of that was lack of pass rush. You can't put it all on their backs. Now, they all fell on the sword for the situation. Brent Grimes not really, because he kind of forced his way out of Miami. I get it. You want bigger, more athletic, physical cornerbacks. Great. But let's make sure it works.
That's going to do it for this week's show. No predictions. We're not there yet. We're going to hold off. You want us to make one bold statement each, though?
Yes, I do.
You got one? You got one in there?
I'm going to predict by the time the season ends, Isaiah Peeds is going to be the starting tailback for the Miami Dolphins.
Ooh, that's spicy.
Good. That's good, yeah.
That is
you like that, huh?
Spicy. I'll give you one. So last year, one of our best predictions from last year. I know you're used to being right, but I felt good about being right. Was we had a question last preseason about what Dolphins that had never made the Pro Bowl before would make the Pro Bowl this year. And you said Rashad Jones, and I said Jarvis Landry, and we were both right.
Absolutely.
There are fewer options, I think, to choose from this year about what possible guys could make the Pro Bowl. So if we're going to pick one, I'll take Laramie Tunsil as a Pro Bowl guy.
Really? Okay, that's interesting.
You got one?
I just gave you one. I said Isaiah Peeds is going to.
But he's going to. Okay, all right.
He's going to be a starting.
Any Pro Bowl?
Pro Bowl. Oh.
Who hasn't made a Pro Bowl before? You got one? It's tough.
No.
Okay, good. Great. That's going to do it. If you're watching us live, stay in. We'll do a little X's and Omar overtime. We'll answer some of the questions that you've sent us here over the last 30 minutes. And we'll be back next week, next Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Thanks for watching X's and Omar.
Let's see. What was the action like? Yeah, I'm not necessarily.
Some questions in the chat room. Would you like me to tell you what they are?
Yes, please.
Who will be the biggest surprise to us fans that will be cut?
Oh, okay.
So, I like that one.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So a question coming from the chat room asks, who will be the biggest surprise player to be cut? I think it's going to be a tough decision between Terrence Fede and Chris McCain. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time believing that they're going to keep all of those defensive ends, even though there's room for it on the depth chart because of the thin linebacker situation. I think Chris McCain is going to be cut, and I'm quite hopeful that he's going to be cut from this standpoint. I've watched Chris McCain get discriminated against, is the right word, by 3 different coaching staffs, which means he's got a lot to do with it.
Right.
Something that he's doing wrong. He needs a fresh start. And I know he got a fresh start with a new coaching staff, and I know he got a fresh start with Dan Campbell, and I know he got a fresh start when Coyle got let go. Mm-hmm. Kid's got talent. Maybe he's not in the right scheme. Maybe he's not being coached by the right position coach. Maybe he's just not this management's find.
Right. Well,
something is the issue. Because you watch practice, makes plays. You watch him in the game, makes plays, never plays. Time to go somewhere else.
All right. Anyone else surprising? Earl Mitchell?
So, what was the question? No, Earl
Surprise
Mitchell's safe.
cuts.
Earl
Okay.
Mitchell's safe. He's guaranteed $4 million. He's
Okay.
cashed his check already.
He's fine.
Surprising cuts. I think Jamil Douglas is in the hot spot. 'Cause
Okay.
If you got to keep Anthony Steen, where's the room for Jamil Douglas?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter asks, anything you are looking for, want to see tomorrow that will lead you to believe this team will compete at a high level?
Ooh, suffocate Atlanta's run game.
Yeah.
Just choke it out. Just choke it out. Atlanta's a very good running team. Suffocate their run game to me, and be able to consistently run the football. I think this season comes down to the trenches. Can the Dolphins run the ball? Can the Dolphins stop the run? If they are a top 10 team when it comes to stopping the run and a top 10 team when it comes to running the football, you've got 10 wins. I promise it to you. It ain't going to happen, but you be a top 10 team running the football, be a top 10 team stopping the run, you will get to 10 wins, no matter how bad Tannehill is.
All right. Let's see. Chef B, true or
Chef B.
false, extending Tannehill has actually hurt this team.
Nah,
That's what they had to do.
You just gave him more money in these 2 years, the first 2 years, than he would have gotten on his fifth-year option and what he already was getting. I think it comes up to like $3 million more. Boss Ross, pisses away $3 million.
Yeah, it's nothing.
It's nothing to him. And what you do is now, if he does turn a corner and does become a top 12 quarterback, you got him locked up for 4 years at a very reasonable rate.
True.
And if he doesn't turn a corner and he poops himself, you can cut it. You can cut him and walk away. No harm, no foul.
Let me give you a true false.
Or
You
trade
ready?
him. Really, realistically, they're probably going to trade him because he's still an asset.
True or false, if the Dolphins had parted ways with Tannehill at the end of last year, true or false, he'd be starting somewhere this year?
Yes.
That's not a true false.
He
Yes, he would be starting.
He
yes.
would be starting somewhere with a bad quarterback. Cleveland.
So you think someone else would have picked him up to start him?
It's too hard to find decent quarterbacks.
Okay.
Decent quarterbacks are getting $90 million. Decent quarterback. Decent. I didn't say good.
Right.
Decent
He's
quarterbacks
decent.
are making
Ryan
$90
Tannehill
million.
is decent.
Yes.
That's true. Okay. Wayne, Thursday game plan should be heavy with the run game to establish a level of physicality.
Yeah, let's wait on that.
Shouldn't be, though. We haven't seen it.
Adam Gase wants to win, and in his mind, he's pass happy. He's just like your last coach. He's gonna lean on the pass, even though the run is the right approach. If they lose the game, I don't care what the score is.
Right.
If they lose the game, but average 4.4 yards per carry, thumbs up for me, and rush for over 100 yards. And let me see what the starters do. Incorporate the backs into the passing game. You need to get these backs going. You know who's going? The receivers.
Mm-hmm.
You spent so much time, effort, and energy getting these three receivers dancing around the field and looking like they can making Tannehill feel like he's effective. Okay, tight ends have suffered, running game has suffered, running backs have suffered. You need to get those. You need to polish them up a little bit before you hit the regular season.
All right, I'm taking some more questions here on Twitter. Steven, yes or no, by the end of the season, Tunsil is the starting left tackle?
I don't know by the end of the season, but I think he's going to start 4 games at left tackle. Sure. I'm not sure Brandon Albert is going to be physically able to play all 16 games. And Tunsil sliding him over to the left tackle. Will he be the starting left tackle in 2017? Absolutely, no doubt in my mind.
I just watch Albert walk around, and I just feel bad for the pain that he is going to live through the rest of his life.
It's unfair to say that because he has walked with a limp his entire life. Yeah. And I used to think that was an issue back in the day when he first got there. He's like, no, that's just how I walk. He's like,
Wow.
You all keep making a big issue about this. No, this is just how I walk.
It just looks painful.
Yeah. We're not 3 years in? Yep, that's how he walks.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. But it should be pointed out, he plays a very physical position. His teammate at Virginia, Eugene Monroe, who came into the league at the same time, retired.
Yeah.
He's not far from it. But he's catching a nice check.
Andy, can Mario Williams move to defensive tackle, allowing the Finns to keep an extra defensive end? I will say, we deal with football players a lot. I'm very rarely astonished by how big someone is. Mario Williams
Is a huge human.
is gigantic.
Yeah. He dwarfs Ndamukong Suh.
We think of Sue as being this
Yeah,
huge man,
yeah.
but Mario Williams
Standing next to Mario Williams,
Sue is
Ndamukong
a
Suh looks
small
like
man.
A linebacker.
Yeah. It's
No,
crazy.
no doubt about
So
it.
can he play defensive tackle?
I think he's gonna. I don't see any pass rush from him anymore. I think he's a first down on the edge, and then when Cam Wake comes into the game on the passing downs, Mario Williams moves inside. I think he's probably the guy who plays next to Sue, and then you have another pass rusher, Andre Branch, or hopefully Chris McCain if they wisen up, playing on the other side of Wake. But yeah, Mario Williams. Haven't seen much from him in practice.
Quiet.
Yeah, very quiet.
Yeah.
Now, maybe he's a veteran that just paces himself. Maybe he doesn't care about the exhibition season. Maybe he doesn't care about practice. And when game time regular season shows up, he just turns it on like a light switch.
Well, the other two veteran defensive linemen kind of feel that way, so it wouldn't be surprising if Mario feels the same way. You got some good ones over there in the chat room, Sarah?
AJ Sweet is dying to know who the starting running back to be this week.
Who will be-
It's Jay Ajayi. Jay Ajayi is going to be starting running back. Who's AJ Sweet asked that question? Yeah. Yeah, they're not going to ruffle anybody's feathers. Arian Foster knows his situation. You want that starting spot. You're going to share. Let me break it down for you. Adam Gase uses two backs. He's always used two backs. In Denver and Chicago, he uses two backs. He does not put them in, rotate them in. He gives them a series each. If Arian Foster, Jay Ajayi is going to be your starter. The young kid needs it for his ego. Don't want to bruise a young kid's ego. Arian Foster does not need his ego stroked. All he wants is opportunity. If he produces, job is his. Simple as that. Now, when one of those guys goes down, you'll be able to see Isaiah Pease or Damian Williams get into the mix. But right now, Adam Gase is such a great manager of personalities. He knows what the young players need. Jay Ajayi, he cannot mentally handle being demoted. And for what?
He should have started get ready to be mentally demoted the minute they signed Arian Foster.
No, they told him, we're going to bring in a veteran. This isn't just your job, and you're going to have to earn it. I respect that. I respect when you're up front with the young player and you tell him you're going to compete for your starting spot. You're going to compete to be. This is your window of opportunity, AJ Ajayi. You want to be a 1,000-yard back. You want to be a 200-carry back in the NFL. You're going to get a month to show what you can do. You better ball. If you don't ball, nobody's going to be crying for you, because Lamar Miller was handed the same opportunity. He balled. That's how it happens in the NFL. You get your window to prove yourself. Anthony Steen. If Anthony Steen comes out here and plays well and holds it down and helps the Dolphins run the ball effectively, is not a liability, makes the right line calls, Anthony Steen might be an NFL starter for the next 8 years.
Sure.
He might solidify himself from an undrafted rookie free agent to a guy who plays 10 years in the NFL. This is his opportunity. You want it, take it.
All right. Most yards from the line of scrimmage by the time the season's over. Arian Foster, Jay Ajayi, or Isaiah Peete?
Arian Foster. You're talking catches and runs?
Yep.
Arian Foster.
Okay. How about just rushing yards?
Jay Ajayi.
Okay. That's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for hanging on late with us for X's and Omar Overtime, and we're going to be back. So if you missed any of your questions, they're probably not going to be that much different by the time next week comes around. So send them to us, and we'll get them to you.
And if you missed any portion of this show, we're going to be posting it later on. Probably 4 o'clock, the first segment's going to get up. And you know how we do it on X's and Omars. It'll be up there pretty much all week.
And you write stuff too, right?
Yeah, sometimes.
All right. So keep an eye on for that on sunsentinel.com. Thanks for watching.